In the last video, we talked about all the mistakes I made as an employee. I thought it will only be fair if I tell you all the mistakes I made as a business owner. And believe me, I made plenty of them. There is a difference, however. As an employee, if you make a big mistake, you're probably going to be let go. As a business owner, there is, however, two possibilities. The first one, if the mistake is big enough, is your company can go bankrupt. The second possibility is that you're going to ride your mistake for a very, very long time, especially if you don't have any oversight, like a board of directors, some investors, or even a mastermind group. So let's have a look at all the mistakes I made as a business owner, as well as what we can learn from it. If you're new here, I'm Jeremy Chatelain, founder of Quickmail, a tool that helps you start more conversation by email, which you can check out at quickmail.io. I produce a video every week about business, so if you're interested, hit that subscribe button. You can always change your mind later. Mistake number one is to hire a cheap accountant. When I say cheap for Switzerland, so that may not be cheap for your country, but I was paying my accountant about $100 an hour. The beginning was great. I actually used him for 4 hours on an afternoon just to teach me the principle of bookkeeping. My first year of operation, my business was making $7,000 in profit. After talking to my accountant, I ended up with $4,000 in loss, which is good. It means less taxes to pay on my profit, which didn't exist. When my company started making a lot of money, however, he started to book things incorrectly. And he even gave me really bad advice, like getting a letterbox in another canton to lower my taxes. When the tax authority started asking me some clarifying questions, and my accountant suggested that I lied, I immediately switched to another accountant to solve this mess. The new accountant charged me $400 an hour, which is 4 times more. But he solved the situation and now I have zero problem with accounting. The lesson here is that some people will be great at different stages of your business, and some won't be able to grow with you. So do not hesitate to review on a regular basis the people working for you. Mistake number two was to give shares without a vesting table nor founder conflict resolution. My company is called HCG Partners GmbH. It's been created with 3 people. In fact, 2. One defaulted the week before incorporation. We just decided not to change the name. I ended up having 60% of the shares and my partner 40%. When I started Quickmail on the side and it started generating some money, I told my partner that I had 2 choices. Either I could fold the company and start a new one, or I could simply buy his shares back. He ended up giving me back the shares, and it's all good. I'm in great terms with him, but nothing forced him to do so. We had no agreement in place to resolve those situations. Plus, the shares were fully vested, which is totally silly. It's crazy to see how many people are just giving shares like candies. Fortunately, I didn't do this mistake again, as I maintain until now 100% ownership of Quickmail. 2 pieces of advice for people who want to have co-founders. Have the shares vesting over a long period of time. That way, you can see ahead of time if someone is not pulling his weight. And number 2, do create a shareholder agreement contract that stipulates what happens in those situations when one partner doesn't want to sell. Number 3, hiring too slow, too late. In 2017, Quickmail was growing like fire, but I was too busy working on the product because my team was just me and a support person. This was the time to grow big and fast, and yet I spent all my time building the product instead of building the business. As a consequence, I probably left millions of dollars on the table, literally as more competitors enter the market, and I didn't develop the business side fast enough. In retrospect, I should have spent way more time hiring and training people before 2017. I had 3 years head start, which is more than enough to put in place a whole team to be able to take full advantage of the 2017 wave. Number 4 is taking way too long to define the culture I wanted. I failed many times at hiring because I was not clear on the culture I wanted. One day, a friend told me to document exactly why I let some people go. I made sure I put on paper everything that went under my skin, and I came up with some culture guides that are now embedded into the company. In retrospect, I should have been way more intentional about building a culture from the start. And I should have clearly communicated that to every applicant. That would definitely have saved us a lot of time. For example, I should have let go one of our support person at least a year earlier. So don't compromise on a culture and keep high standards, even when you're a small team and have difficulties finding candidates. Number 5, not spending enough time on sourcing candidates. Finding candidates is really hard and it takes a lot of time. It's really not as simple as putting a job ad online, unfortunately. I wish I spent more time developing future relationships, making sure that all recruitment pipelines were full, so I could just give a few phone calls if I ever need to hire. You don't need such a great pipeline if you don't really need highly skilled individuals. If you do, then it's better to work on your LinkedIn, Facebook, and even Twitter connections. That way, you get to know interesting individuals who have the potential to join your team. Number 6, hiring mercenaries over missionaries. Now, I made too many mistakes, but this one is actually easy to avoid, mostly because they're easy to spot. There are a lot of definition between missionaries or mercenaries, but basically, in just a few words, mercenaries are highly motivated by the lust for making money, while missionaries, on the other hand, although they recognize the importance of money, they're fundamentally driven by the desire to make meaning. In short, mercenaries put their needs before the one of the company. Unfortunately, I hired a mercenary. Twice, actually. It should have been clear at the time they demand more, even for the company barely was able to pay them, that they don't really have the long-term interest of the company in mind. The lesson here is to focus on hiring missionaries and let the mercenaries work at other places. You'll be fine without them, honestly. Number 7 is not to delegate enough. Now this one I'm still working on it, but I'm getting better. The company can't really go fast if the CEO is involved with everything. Last week, one of my team members told me to stop playing with the design. So that was a good reminder. I should have delegated way more so I could focus on building a great company instead of focusing on building the product. Transitions such as this do take time, but I have good hopes to manage the transition by the end of the year. So stay tuned to know if that worked or not. 2 things that personally helped me making the mental shift. Number 1, lead with context. This is actually pretty fun and a good exercise to be able to articulate a vision or context and having people executing within this context. Number 2, you need to be able to trust people's decision-making ability, or otherwise you'll micromanage them. So make sure you check this during the hiring process. It's super important. One thing to remember is if you have multiple people on your team and one person really can't perform, you may tell yourself, this is because I'm a bad manager. Sure, but if the other people are performing on the team, then you need more people who perform and less people who can't perform with your bad management style. So go ahead and find those ones and let the other people go. Number 8 is doing a complete rewrite of the application in 2019. Now that was silly. At some point, I hired a very smart developer to carry on building quick mail so I can focus on other things. But it wasn't management by delegation, it was management by abdication. Unfortunately, I gave him too much freedom, and I didn't realize the incredible amount of complexity that was introduced in the application until it was too late. At that time, I thought it'd be probably easier to rewrite the application using the knowledge I had accumulating over the years to make a much better version. I figured it would take me probably a couple of months, 4 at most. And since while I was at it, I decided to also upgrade to the latest technology. In the end, it took me actually more than a year in order to have the finished version. This really meant a year without update for existing customers of the previous version. And if this wasn't enough, 6 months into the rewrite, Google introduced a mandatory auditing for each project using the Gmail API. This was actually a nightmare. I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Not a good place to be. So lesson learned. Make sure you have one unified vision for the source code and deal with technical debt as quickly as you can. If you need to create another version, find ways to migrate the new architecture in stage rather than building a brand new version from scratch. Having 2 products to maintain is like hell, and I mean it. Number 9, integration with Aircool. Now this one was such an easy one to avoid. I don't know what I was thinking. Luckily, I documented my mistakes so other people don't have to do it. And every time someone on my team is suggesting something as silly as that, I can point them to this massive mistake I made. I basically wasted a month of development resources as well as opportunities to support an integration that basically no one asked for. I thought phone calls would be important, but I failed to do a proper due diligence. How were existing users using phone calls? Were they actually using phone calls? All those basic questions were simply ignored. Instead, I should have spent that time on integrating with a tool people are already asking me to integrate with. Lesson learned here, do your customer research. There are ideas that can easily be verified, no need to take a big leap of faith. And finally, number 10, taking too many big bets. In fact, I just didn't have enough bets because the bet I took were too big. In retrospect, I should have done way more initiatives, but with a smaller scope. And I just made another one this year with the new website. I'm aware of it, and that's something I intend to fix this year. Since lots of learnings happen from mistakes, I need to give myself more chances to fail so I can learn faster. And yes, education costs, but not getting an education costs way more. And I guess that's why you're looking at this channel. If you like this video, just thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you have any questions, feel free to fill the comments, and I see you next time.